Hey, this is David Owen.
And this is Marian Caligowan.
And this is You Show Me Yours, a podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and television that they loved before the first date. And this time I was made to watch The Mirror Has Two Faces.
Yep, it's the ugly duckling story that asks us to believe that Barbara Streisand is kind of a hag. And it goes from there. Yes, it's the 1996 kind of a rom-com, I guess, with Streisand and Jeff Bridges and Lauren Bacall in what I think was her last film role. And Pierce Brosnan kind of going against type. I feel like he generally plays really nice guys, and this is not an especially nice guy. And George Segal, who I always like seeing in things.
Yeah.
Dave, what did you know about this going into it?
Nothing.
Okay.
The name made me think it would be something much more dramatic and serious.
Well, it's dramatic. I don't know if it's serious.
I don't know if it's dramatic.
It's trying to be dramatic,
Sure.
I think. Well, okay. And I asked this because I think this is going to affect the discussion that we have for the rest of the episode. What did you think of it?
This is weird, man.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I sort of love this movie. I sort of think, oh my God, this is problematic. Because, I don't think that this movie treats Streisand or her character very well. And I think that we are not exactly the generation to appreciate any character that Streisand plays, because I think she's supposed to have this air of she's not very pretty, but she makes up for it in personality, talent, whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't think she's unattractive. Like, pretty is not the word I would use, but she's not hideous. And I think you have to kind of think that going into this for the movie to work. And it's kind of weird. It's similar to what we talked about with Truth About Cats and Dogs. Like, okay, I can, if that's the premise you want me to take, that this person is not attractive, all right, but she is. You just didn't brush her hair.
Yeah.
And you put her in clothes that swamp her, or, whatever. So, I don't know. Like, what am I missing about Streisand? Is there some background stuff that we're supposed to get and like, okay, well, now I see why we think she's hideous.
I don't know. I mean, she's not ugly, but
No.
I think she, she's not traditionally Hollywood attractive.
I think she's striking, though.
She's unique.
Which is always a kiss of death.
I mean, more than striking.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, I know what you say, but I feel like when people say someone is striking and they have like one or more prominent features, what you're trying to not say is that they're unique. Like that they have a unique look. You're trying unique sounds like I'm trying to say ugly, but I don't want to.
That's true. Unique is code for a lot of things. Well, I don't know. Anyway, going into this, there's a lot of, I'm just like, wait, am I supposed to think she's a hag? Because I don't, but okay.
Like, I don't buy her as ugly, and I don't at the beginning, and I don't buy her as attractive at the end.
Really? Not at all?
Not in the way that they are trying to sell it to me.
Oh, well, she put on makeup, so there you go.
And like frizzed out her hair and lightened it.
That's a perm.
And like lost weight, quote unquote.
Apparently, although you can tell that she's slim through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, yeah. All right. Well, background for this. Streisand plays professor at Columbia. She's English, I think. And Jeff Bridges is also professor at Columbia in the math department. So right away, we're kind of set up, logic, emotion, blah, blah, two different things. George Segal plays another professor who is Jeff Bridges' friend, and he's in the anthropology department, and he is some great comic relief through the whole thing. I always enjoy, I don't think I've seen him in that many things. I remember him mostly from Just Shoot Me, the sitcom with David Spade, but I enjoy him whenever he
anytime he pops up.
Yeah. And they're both, it's hard to, I think they're in their, like 40s, 50s. Streisand was actually 54 when this was made, and Bridges was 47. I think they're meant to be a little bit younger, but anyway. Barbara Streisand doesn't really want to go on dates, but also doesn't have any dates. Like the first time we see her, she's calling to cancel a date with somebody because we don't really know why. She wants to watch a baseball game instead. I don't know.
Yeah.
And Greg, Jeff Bridges, has a lot of women throwing themselves at him because, you know, he's kind of hot. But I don't know, like he's overcome with lust and it just goes awry. I don't understand that either.
Yeah, it's like there's different movies competing here because it's like slapstick comedy. Like he's literally just like duh, duh, duh,
Yeah.
like when a beautiful woman comes around.
Yeah.
Like he gets lightheaded and is like flusters his words and can't concentrate.
And she's just like in his view. Like there are times when the beautiful woman does some things that is a little bit lascivious, but for the most part he can just be seeing her and he just turns into a blithering idiot. So I don't really understand that. But he decides that he needs to have a relationship where there's absolutely no sex. And it's just companionship, and he is looking for basically an ugly woman, so he won't even be attracted to her, and it can be all about the brain and the companionship.
Well, so he's compensating for this weakness that he has. Like if he gets a woman who's too attractive, he won't be able to explore the rest of it. But also, like he's specifically seeking a woman with a PhD and these sorts of things. Like,
well, and we see him sorting through. So he places an ad in, I don't know, the paper or whatever. Professor seeking same for companionship, must have a PhD, physical appearance not important, which is like code for I'm into some weird shit. Like I would not answer that ad, but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Rosa's sister answers it for her. Or the sister, Claire, is played by Mimi Rogers and is meant to be, like the epitome of beauty. Although, again, I don't really see that. Like, I think she's attractive, but anyway.
Wait, what?
Mimi Rogers is pretty, but not like.
Oh, no.
Not Helen of Troy.
No, yes.
Really?
Mimi Rogers, like peak Mimi Rogers, like 90s Mimi Rogers. Yes, please.
Well, okay. I guess she's tainted by the Tom Cruise air around her.
Maybe. I don't know.
Anyway, Claire answers it for her. And he goes to visit Rose's class, and she's lecturing on, I don't know how this fits into her whole. I want to see where this is on the syllabus. Like what? Yeah, what is this lecture on?
She's tying it into like, Guinevere and she like all these like. So she's talking about sort of literature, romance and literature and tropes
of love in literature, and Greg is there for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And happens to hear her talking about how in the 12th century there was this thing called courtly love between knights and women who were already married. And it was all completely companionship, I guess a little bit for unrequited stuff, but never acted on sexually. And, and isn't this great? Blah, blah, blah. Well, he leaves. And then she's like, but love is great too. And it feels fantastic. And don't we all want it? And he totally misses that part. So right off the bat, we've got some miscommunication.
He's convinced that he's found a kindred spirit.
Yes.
Because he listened to a quarter of her lecture.
Right. Well, then they dispense with that pretty early. So she kind of knows what she's getting into, but so it's an odd, like you expect that to be something that doesn't pay off till the end of the movie when she feels bamboozled. But anyway, he asks her to dinner, and then they go to a concert. And again, that sort of logic versus romance thing. They're at a chamber music concert, and he's got this spectrometer thing that is graphically representing the music, and she's just like, I just want to listen to it. And it's in a church, and so it's all a beautiful space and beautiful music in it, and like, so clearly like they're a little bit at odds here, but that's what you get when you mess with math majors, really.
Apparently.
So at some point he kind of explains to her what his theory is, and he's like, and I went to your class, and your theory is spot on. And she's like, did you stay for the whole class? He's like, oh no, blah blah blah. And she's realizing, okay, this is all a miscommunication, but okay, I like talking to him, it's fine. And they clearly, they get along like a house on fire, intellectually, and she is trying to help him be a better teacher because, as we see, he's terrible. I've actually never had a math teacher who was a good teacher.
Yeah.
She talks about how you're having this math party with yourself and you didn't invite anybody and all they see is your back. And I'm like, yep, that's pretty much math. And she introduces him to baseball, which is a lot about math and probability and angles and, various things. And he starts to include that in his class and, blah, blah, blah. And after a while, he's like, I think that we should get married. I want to spend more time with you. And, I don't think I ever want sex. Maybe we could do that if I have enough notice, but, mostly just wanting. And she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And like, to me, the important thing to remember through this whole thing is he is being completely honest and upfront the entire time. He is 100.
Yes.
He is saying exactly what he wants.
Well, sure.
He is being 100% genuine.
Well, I mean, is he though? He's saying what he thinks he wants.
No, I think at the time he's saying what he wants.
Well.
Like, that's my interpretation of it. I think there are indications that as their relationship continues, he starts to struggle against some changing feelings. But initially, before they're married,
Mm-hmm.
he is 100% in it for the companionship and not the romance. And he is honest about that and upfront. And he is telling her exactly what he wants and what he expects out of a relationship.
Which is emphasized by the fact that after they get married and she moves in, there's twin beds.
Yeah, separate beds.
So, which I gotta say, I don't care if you're having sex or not. Just sleeping next to another person and having another body there and just snuggling, that is one of life's great pleasures. So you are really depriving yourself, but okay.
Sure.
Okay. You could also, because I don't remember what kind of bed he had before, if we saw it, you could also argue that he subconsciously knows that he wants her and is getting the twin beds to, again, protect himself from wanting her. Anyway, as their marriage goes on, she sees the guy that she canceled the date with before. He's happily engaged and he and his fiance are, all schmoopy over each other at the park. And she's kind of like, oh, yeah, that would have been nice to have, because Greg respects her, holds her in great esteem, thinks she's very funny and smart and everything, but is not schmoopy. Like, there's no hugging, there's no smooching, there's no hand holding, there's, absolutely none of this. They act like you would with, a colleague, which they are.
Well, more than colleagues, and she knows that this is the expectation from the very beginning. She is not shown to not be happy with that, but continues it anyway.
Not shown to be not
happy.
She
is shown to be not happy with that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I started and then changed the sentence. She is shown to be not happy with that arrangement, but continues it anyway. Can you tell that I think she's the villain of this movie?
I can, and I don't like that interpretation, really. Because people are allowed to think that they're okay with something and then they're not.
Nope. She does not think she's okay with it. It is demonstrated 100% that she is not okay with it. He is the one who goes into it thinking he is okay with the arrangement, and his feelings change over time. From the very beginning, from the moment that she knows that he didn't hear her entire lecture, she knows what he is in it for, and she knows that she is not in it for that, but continues it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do think that's a missed opportunity for the movie to show that card so early on, because it does muddle who's agreeing to what and who expects what and everything. And I would have expected that to come later. I don't know. Maybe she thought she could be okay with it. I don't know. I don't think.
I think she thought that he was an attractive man more than she could get, and she was going to make herself be okay with it.
Well, I think she underestimated his commitment to celibacy. I think she thought, he's a man, he's going to want sex eventually.
She thought he wasn't being genuine because she wasn't being genuine. Like, she expected him to give in because that was her intention all along in entering into the relationship. She knew she wasn't entering into it under honest pretenses, so she assumed that he wasn't either, that it would just take him time to waver.
Wow.
That's not your reading of that? Like, she is explicitly shown to not be on board with this concept of just good companions and no romance.
So again, I think that she thought he's a man and he's going to want sex at some point because that's what men do.
Right. Because is this just the podcast where you make my point for me over and over?
That's not making your point.
Yes, it's making my point. She thought, I'm not into this the way he's describing it. And surely he will break as well. So I'll pretend in the meantime until he eventually breaks like men break. She had a motive. She had an expectation that that they would fall into some sort of romantic love.
No, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that she thought he would just want his itch scratched.
Well, either way, it was going against what the relationship he had explicitly set up.
Well, okay.
He had at most offered transactional sex, like, if you have a need, perhaps with enough notice, I can fulfill it.
Well, right. And she gave him, 12 hours notice and he couldn't fulfill.
Right. And that's the thing he was being dishonest about.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want the relationship to involve sex at all. And he felt that would ruin it. And so when she requested it, that is when things started to break down on his side.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was already shown prior to that he was on some level starting to fall for her.
Yes. Well, right. So he's also not being honest with himself or with her.
Right.
As things evolve.
Right. So here's the thing. He's sticking to the reason that he initially got into the relationship which was for pure companionship and no sex, even when his feelings are starting to change. She's also sticking to her original intentions when she got into the relationship, which is to get him to change and to get him to want something more than their initial arrangement. Like his flaw is that he is trying to remain true to the commitment he made, despite the fact that his feelings are changing. He said he liked a yellow car, and a year later, the yellow car is not really doing it for him, but he's still telling people he likes his yellow car.
And why is that honorable? That doesn't seem like a good thing.
I don't know if it's honorable or not, but I mean, if you agree to something, I would consider that honorable. But she got into it with the opposite. She got into it with the intention of him giving in and him giving up. And her intentions were always for the relationship to go somewhere other than companionship. And she sticks to that motivation throughout the whole thing.
Okay, I don't agree with your interpretation, but
what is her motivation then?
She,
in your eyes,
likes his companionship. She hopes that at some point he will change his mind about stuff, but she likes his companionship. I don't think she has some craven plan.
I'm not saying that she does. Like, again, you're saying what I'm saying.
Okay.
Like,
this is
it's not that she doesn't enjoy his companionship. She clearly does, but she is hoping for more in a scenario where it was explicitly entered into stating there wouldn't be any more.
Okay. Well, this is getting tedious. I will just say at times you think that's all you want, and then later you realize, oh, I actually wanted a little bit more.
Yes. And I side with the person who says, well, what I originally agreed to was X. So despite my feelings changing, I'm going to stick to X, as opposed to the person who wanted Y and X and is now upset that Y isn't happening and only X is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I feel like, yeah. Is a surprise to anybody that you are the more intensely logical person in this relationship?
Well, and I think
am not.
I think that this comes down to man-woman. I think a woman watches this movie and sees her as, the quote unquote hero. And I think a man and him as the, just give in to your feelings, just let it, let it be, stop being so damn logical and give in to love. And I think a man watches this and sees a woman deceiving a man.
I don't think she's deceiving.
I think 100% she's deceiving.
Well, okay.
She enters into it from the very beginning. Like, she knows so early on, like, what you're saying is exactly right. This should have been a misunderstanding. The way that both parties are innocent in this is that there is a misunderstanding until the end when the ad stuff is revealed. Because they do that as like a fake reveal. Mm-hmm. That, even her mom is like, oh, I know something you don't know. He found you through an ad. And she's like, I already know that. Like, she already knows what would normally be the reveal in any movie like this.
Yeah, that's a little odd.
Yeah, like, she already knows that it was a bet that the jock couldn't get the girl in overalls to be the prom queen. Like, she already knows that.
Yeah. Well, can we talk about the mother for a second? So
Yes.
she's one of the villains.
Yeah,
to me.
sure. Yeah, for sure.
And the reverse of we're supposed to think that Streisand is a hag. I have never thought that Lauren Bacall was what you would call beautiful, like striking.
Old Lauren Bacall, yeah. Like,
Even young. She's
young.
striking, but not good. She's not Rita Hayworth. She's not Carol Lombard. Like
she's elegant in that sort of, young, like early Hollywood sort of way.
Yeah. And in here, she's, oh God, I looked up her age. She's 72, I think. She's elegant in that, goes to the beauty parlor and gets her hair done and wears expensive clothes kind of way. Like she's not a hag, but she's also, she's not so gorgeous to me. So that's odd that she's played up the whole movie as like the ultimate in beautiful women. And I don't really see it, but, she's vain.
Sure.
And she's kind of shallow. You kind of wonder, how did an English professor come out of this family? I don't understand.
Well, they kind of tell you, like, because her mother told her she was ugly for her whole childhood.
Well,
so she aspired towards probably books and education.
I suppose her father must have been really like the kindred spirit, and he's not mentioned. He died at some point, and that's all we know. But So, sorry, let's back up. So, at a certain point, Rose is like, "Hey, do you think that we could have sex tonight? Like, like you said we could." And he's like, I guess. And they attempt to, and he's really kind of getting into it. And then he's like, "Nope, stop. I can't do it. I don't want this." And he kind of yells at her for wanting sex.
Because he thinks that it will ruin what they have.
Yeah.
Because it's ruined every previous relationship he's had.
Well, yes. Never mind that he was with very different women than her before, but okay. And she basically goes back to her mother's and she's like, "Okay, I can't do this. I thought I could, but I can't." And he conveniently is going on a book tour. He's going to be in Europe for 3 months because he's written this very dense book about this mathematical theorem, which he explains to her and she gets it right away, which I think means it's not really all that groundbreaking. It's that prime numbers, when you get in the low ones, are separated by 1. So like 3, 5, 7. 4 is between 3 and 5. 6 is between 5 and 7. 11, 13. 17, 19. And I'm like, okay, yeah. But when you get up into the high numbers, that's not going to happen. I don't see what is so groundbreaking about this. But anyway, he's on the 3-month book tour. And so she has time on her own to kind of wallow for a minute. And then like her mother shows her this picture from when she was a baby. And, "Oh, you were pretty when you were 2. And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then boom, she's out there exercising and eating carrots and putting on makeup. And then we have a makeover sequence. And I'm like, I don't. And it's kind of like she thought, oh, I can't really tell if she's intending to be more attractive so that he will actually want her, or if she's just like, well, I don't really care if he does or doesn't want me, but I want to look different. I can't tell which way it is.
That's the problem. Yeah, her motivation, the whole end half of this movie, like they kind of save it to a certain degree, but her motivations for doing this are very unclear because the way that she greets him when he comes back from his tour very much makes it seem like she did it to mess with him.
Yeah.
But then after the way that they end makes it seem more like she's just doing it for herself. But her motivations are very unclear. It's all very, it happens fast and it's very just odd. It's
hard to, I like the first half of the movie better than the second half. Honestly, because they're very, pleasant to watch together. Sure. They're wacky, not wacky. I keep saying wacky and it's not that, but they're pleasant to watch together.
They're just I mean, like the premise of the movie is what if I mean, his premise, I should say, of his theory is, what if a man and a woman could just be friends and sex wasn't involved? Because he even says it apart, like when they're having the conflict about the sex, is like they already have what usually comes after the sex. You know, usually you start a relationship, it's about physicality, and then if you stay with a person, then it becomes about friendship and companionship.
Or the things like, which she demonstrates at one point, she doesn't like pepper on her salad, and she really likes extra dressing on it.
Learning
and,
other
that
people, like,
kind of stuff. Yeah.
And yeah, that they already have that, and why would they spoil that by going backwards? Like, he feels like they by jumping the hurdle, or by not even putting the hurdle in place of the physicality, they jumped ahead in the race, and everybody else is still back there trying to navigate, and they have this great advantage, you know. So yeah, it's it's an interesting idea, and I think, you know, throughout my life, at one time or another, I have had good female friends, and my assumption at the time was that they couldn't or wouldn't be interested in me. So it made it so much easier to just relate to them as a human being instead of some kind of prospect. And we became good friends and had good, you know, good times doing things that you might even think of as dates, like, but there was just nothing more than friendship there, and it was great. And, you know, at one time or another, they all expressed that to me, that like it was weird and nice to have a guy friend who they weren't having to like fend off his advances, and they just didn't have to worry about it, you know.
How'd you feel about that? That seems like that would not feel good to hear.
No, it felt great, because
Oh,
I
really?
wasn't
Okay.
like, with the exception of one, I wasn't interested in them
Oh, okay.
on any level anyway.
Okay.
You know, at least one or two of them turn out to be lesbians at some point, which has no bearing on the story.
Okay.
But just like, you know, that way I know, because I was the kind of guy who just assumed no one was attracted to me, and years later found out that, you know, a couple of girls who I briefly knew and had these sorts of friendly relationships with were waiting on me to do the typical male thing in advance, but the ones that, you know, stuck around were not.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, and yeah, that was very interesting. And I think there is something there. Like, if you can find someone that you can be friends with, like, that's important. And it doesn't happen enough, because everything is set up for that initial will they, won't they, you know. I mean, we even do it to kids. Like, if a boy and a girl is playing at the park,
Gonna
it's
get
like,
married
oh,
someday. Yeah.
we're guilty of it with our kids.
We have.
You know, so yeah, so, you know, I mean, it's an interesting premise, but like after that interesting sort of tidbit of like kernel of a spark of something, it just goes off the rails in so many different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think also, like, he's fighting against his own desire and doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of times, other, like, you know, she's helping him with sit-ups or something, and they get close and they're sweaty, and
Like, I don't, just because I think she's the villain, spoiler, everybody in this movie is a villain. There isn't a good guy in this movie. Like, nobody in this movie is not a villain.
Her friend, her
one friend
who is cast in the unfortunate role of the fat spinster who needs another fat spinster to be friends with. Like, that's no. She deserves better.
Sure, she is not a villain, and his friend is not overtly a villain, but you get the feeling of like, if Rose was more attractive,
well, also
he might be going after her.
If she were 20 years younger.
Or 20 years younger.
He's very much like, he is what he is. He doesn't make apologies for it. He's kind of like the cheerful hedonist, like, you know.
But just because I think she's the like explicit villain of the first half of the movie doesn't mean that I think he's innocent. Like, nobody here is, you know, his entire theory. And like I said, he maintains, whether it's honorable or not, he maintains a devotion to this ideal that he starts out with, that a man and a woman can have a relationship that doesn't involve, you know, romantic love or sex. And it can be better, in part because he's writing a book about it. And like, he needs fodder for his book. You know, so I'm not saying his intentions are pure necessarily when he sticks to the quote unquote deal. like he has as much to lose by admitting that he is falling for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't understand how this whole thing of a non-sexual marriage is going to make a book by a math professor, though.
Because he's basing it somehow on those related numbers, right? Like related prime numbers.
I don't
There's
know.
like there is a like I don't know I don't know what his exact theory was, but somehow he was relating these paired prime numbers that were separated by one number to this idea of a man and woman not being romantic.
This is a bit similar to whenever there's a character in a movie who we're told is a really good writer, and then you get a sample of their writing, and I'm always like, that's not good. Or like, this was meant to be a whole long newspaper story, and it took you 30 minutes to do 30 seconds to do a voiceover. That's not what. And you're like, no one involved with this movie actually has the background that this character is purported to have. There were no math professors involved in this to come up with this theory. Which
probably not.
I find annoying.
But, although, a lot of times it's based on something, like.
Well, this actually is based on a movie, a French movie.
Well, I meant the theory is like the theory that they're espousing, like chaos theory, like Dr. Ian Malcolm.
Oh.
Like chaos theory is a real thing.
Yeah.
With, involving fractals and chance and all these other things. Like he's not that Michael Crichton didn't invent chaos theory to have a rock star scientist. Like he's actually just espousing like the tenets of actual chaos theory.
Sure. Well, but this is a good time to mention.
Yes.
This actually is based on a French movie from the 1958. And any problems that we note in this movie, that version is way more problematic.
Cool.
So this professor, I wonder if he is a math professor, and that's where they get this from, marries a girl who is, the Wikipedia description says, a sensitive and intelligent girl who is physically unattractive. And he's like kind of just a dick to her from the start. Cool. They have 2 kids, so it's not even like the no sex. He has a car accident, and a plastic surgeon works on him, and the plastic surgeon is like, hi, Mrs. Jackass, would you like some plastic surgery to be pretty? And she says, oh, yes, please. And she's pretty. And he treats her worse because she's not, I guess he really wanted an unattractive person so he could treat like shit. I don't know. And now she's not.
Weird.
And her sister's husband falls in love with her. That's, I guess, where we get the sister and the husband of this movie.
Yeah.
And they're going to go off and elope and have a life together. Quote, but they are stopped when her husband kills the plastic surgeon. This dramatic act recalls her to her duties as a wife and mother, and she renounces her happiness to tend to her husband and children. The end. So no happy endings for anybody.
Yeah, that sounds weird.
That's effed up.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they didn't remake that movie faithfully because best
to go in this direction.
Yes.
As weird as it is.
Yes. But yeah, I mentioned the sister and the sister's husband. Rosa's sister Claire is married at the very beginning of the movie. She's marrying Alex, played by Pierce Brosnan, who apparently was dating Rose first, I guess rather casually, and then he met Claire and fell in love with her because Claire is beautiful. Blah, 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 blah. It's a bit of like Rachel and Leah from the Bible. Here, 2 sisters. I picked the pretty one. And I said earlier, Pierce Brosnan he plays James Bond, or he plays just kind of nice guys, and here he's kind of a cad.
Yeah.
Because as soon as he sees Rose in her makeover form, he's like, oh, well, now you're really great. Claire inevitably cheats on him because who knows, she does. There's a whole lot to unpack there with Claire and her feelings about this marriage. This is her 3rd marriage, by the way. And she's like, he's there all the time. I can't escape him. And they've been married like 6 months. Like,
it's very weird. It's very weird. It's why I say like everybody in this movie is like,
kind of awful.
From the mom to the,
yeah. So she sleeps with her masseuse or something, and Alex is immediately like, okay, well, moving on to the next sister. And he's like, oh, Rose, I must have loved you all along. And she, on the one hand, she's been secretly in love with him this whole time. So at first she's like, oh, this is great. This wonderful man is in love with me too. And then she's like, wait a minute, hang on. I'm the same person.
Yeah.
What is it? Why do you love me now? Oh, it's because I physically changed. Okay, that's a dick move. Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I wish that we had had a little bit more of that. And there was something about, I was fine the way I was before.
Mhm.
Which again, it goes back to what's her motivation for this whole makeover arc anyway.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to change things up. But yeah, I would
she's not like,
I would like her to know that she was valuable before.
Right. And like, yeah, like she on some level understands that by the end of the movie. But what motivated her in the first place to do it other than spite against him? Like she knows that he went for her because she wasn't attractive.
And
so
he almost says that too, which is really cruel. And he realizes it as soon as he says it, but he's like something like, I took precautions to make sure the sexual attraction wouldn't be an issue. Like, oh God, that's awful.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's very weird.
But he eventually realizes that he loves her no matter what she looks like, whether she's pretty or not. And he wants her no matter what she looks
Greg.
like.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Husband.
Yes, she's ditched Alex by this point. And he comes to her apartment at 6 a.m. and yells at her on the street. And she goes down and they kiss. And way back in her first lecture, she said, why is it that when we kiss, we hear Puccini in our heads? Well, her neighbor is playing Puccini through the window, which is a nice little callback, blah, blah. And I noticed there's a frame and they frame the window, and helpfully, in case you don't get it, it's right there. Just Puccini, and the end. And then over the credits, they're doing this weird, like, dancing in the street, and I don't even understand that, and doing lots of kissing. And,
this whole movie's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot that I enjoy about this movie, but there's a lot that is like, whoa, that's weird.
Yeah. I mean, that's like it feels like a very 90s rom-com thing. And it feels like it's got kind of Big Fat Greek Wedding vibes to it. Like in that way of like Ugly Duckling.
Okay, you ruined me for that movie. Don't do that for this too.
How did I ruin you?
You told me that John Corbett was too good to be true, and that he was he was secretly planning to steal her family's restaurant.
Oh, 100%. But in this case, though, she's the one. It's Rose that's the villain.
No. English professors are always good people. Look it up.
She's going to steal all of his book money from his riveting book about prime numbers.
Nobody's buying that book.
Yeah,
Nobody. Nobody's buying that.
It's just a muddled, but motivations are like, the motivations like there's some good storytelling in it. Like with the part where he learns how she cuts her salad and turns the plate and makes the perfect bite, and like earlier in the movie, her mom is getting on to her for making the perfect bite, and like. It's shown that like all of these little quirks and eccentricities are the reason that he falls in love with her. It has, and like his falling in love it's genuine. His falling into romantic love. It has nothing to do with attractiveness. But then in the end, she becomes attractive. Like it undermines
the thing that makes him. It's although I do like his line toward the end when he goes over to, his friends, but Henry, the who is an anthropologist, by the way, which is delightful. When they get married at the Justice of the Peace, and Henry's there, and it's like, congratulations! I'm sure you'll be very interesting to watch, and which is great from an anthropologist. Anyway, he goes over to Henry's apartment, and he's moaning and groaning about, and he says she eats carrots now. Isn't that tragic?
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the funny thing is, like, because he got to know her, he began to accept all of those quirks about her. And because attraction wasn't in the cards, he fell in love with,
he spent the time to get to know her.
And he literally did the thing that he said, because they jumped over all that physical beginnings of a relationship. He fell in love with her in the way that like a couple that's been married for 20 or 30 years are in love with each other. He knows all of her habits, how she orders her food, and like he's it's almost like they literally did jump over that, and therefore really got to a deeper connection faster, only to realize that like that was going to lead them to back to the first part of the relationship,
Right.
and he was resistant to that when it started to happen.
Although, well, you know what? Now that I think of it, I think, yeah, sex should result from a connection. It should not be the thing that causes a connection,
Right.
to me.
Yeah,
That's
and
I am.
I think that's the path they were on.
I think, in the minority about this,
Yeah.
but I feel like that is a healthier attitude, and that's what I.
Yeah, I mean that's the path they were on, and his problem is he resisted that.
Well, he was with all these women who they were having sex before any connection, and
Right.
he
and
so
he,
he's
and his theory was that the sex was the thing that broke or prevented the connection, and because he already had a connection with her, he didn't want to jeopardize that.
and it looked like these were terrible women anyway. So
Right.
there
There
was never going to
there was
be
never
a
gonna be a
connection. Yeah,
Right. And the
Yeah.
thing is, like, like he, while she went into the whole thing always plotting for this to happen,
I don't know about that.
he went into it expecting it not to. Like they both, it's like I said, it's not like that they both were innocent. They both wanted the relationship to go a certain way and resisted when it started to go in a different way.
Well, you know what though? For as intensely logical as he is, he kind of missed the point about, the order of operations matters. You would think that a math professor would get this.
Yeah.
Like in his case, he had the experience of sex coming first, and then there was no connection. And he was like, okay, well, we won't have sex. Like, well, no, if you have the connection first and then the sex, then it's fine.
Yeah.
PEMDAS. Like, you gotta,
Yeah.
Anyway, oh yeah, here's the thing. Okay, the attitudes about food in this movie are really effed up, which
Yeah,
I suppose is accurate for the 90s.
They're very
but-
late 80s, early 90s. Yeah.
So Streisand is never what you would call fat in this. There's one point,
In baggy clothes.
right? There's a lot of, yeah. I noticed it was all baggy. You never see ankles or wrists
Oh, yeah.
or anything. There's one scene where after she's decided to go down the makeover route and she's been exercising for a little bit, her mother brings her clothes to try on and she says, oh, here's an 8, as if, was she an 8 before? And she says, oh, now I need a 6.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, was an 8?
Right.
This, like, what?
Here's an 8, fatty.
I haven't been an 8 in my entire adult life. Like, what?
Right.
Also, a 6 is not, which I don't know. Anyway, and her mother and her sister are, oh, don't eat. They don't say it, but they might as well. A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. Their eating disorders are probably a thing.
Yeah.
Whereas Rose enjoys food, like she's got food hidden everywhere, which is kind of a weird quirk.
Yeah,
like
it's a weird
borderline.
And she
bulimia, which
eats
is-
food when she's stressed.
Yeah.
And this and something I can relate to, but
Yeah.
it's all very weird. And there's all these social things where her mom is like when they have dinner, all three of them, Greg and
Yeah.
Rose and the mom, she's heaping up Greg's plate with stuff and then just giving Rose a little bit.
Yeah.
and-
That's bad.
And Rose even comments to her friend at some point that she, it's a big change having a man you can eat in front of.
Yeah.
Like that you don't mind. And I'm like, what? Like maybe I was just naive, or I don't know. Maybe I'm just the perfect man, but I was never like, oh, this woman that I'm dating ate too much at dinner. Like,
Well, I think you did not grow up expecting women to be the size of twigs, but I know that that's a thing,
Sure.
Like, or I guess I never felt the need to eat less in front of a man, but I know a lot of women who are like, oh, I'm just going to eat half of I don't want him to think I'm a pig.
yeah,
Well,
I don't know. Very weird.
Yeah. But yeah, the mother and the sister walking eating disorders. Like, don't tell another adult what to eat, particularly in their own home. Like, let them choose.
Yeah. It's very. But I mean, that's just. I mean, and the thing is, like, if the movie was willing to comment on it, it would be different. But it's just sort of like presented and then just sort of in a way, it's comedic. It's comedy relief. You know, like Rose goes to lunch with her sister, and the sister is like cutting Rose off from getting other things, and is like just salad and soup, and that's it.
Yeah, like no bread, no dessert, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Well, and then she goes to lunch with her friend, the other fat spinster, and she's like, I just can't have a burger in the middle of the day anymore. Don't you feel bloated? And I don't think she's saying it with any malice, but the friend is like,
right.
No, I'm a fatty, remember?
Who's even talking?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of supposed to be like a maybe a little like turning point for her in the movie, because then the next thing they sit down and she's like, I'll give you half my salad if you give me half your burger.
Right. Like, I think that was a much healthier way to do it. And but yeah, I would kind of
because like there needed to be a point in this movie where she like heard herself talking, because there's even a point where she's watching something about health and this and that, and it, you know, near the end when she's like putting on makeup or something. Yeah, like there were all these little opportunities where she could have just had this moment where she just stopped and went like, oh, what have I become?
Yeah.
And they didn't. Like,
I liked myself.
It was kind of unearned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they were doing that. I think it was Vanna White doing this thing of, you know, we all want to be attractive. And I was thinking, I think these days there is a bit of a backlash against that notion. Against we want to be attractive, or I owe it to society to be attractive, or I should choose.
It was like about teeth whitening or something.
Yeah. Or, you know, the notion that like I should choose clothing that flatters me so nobody sees my imperfections. And there are a lot of people who are like, fuck that. I am wearing the color that I want. And if it's not flattering, that's not my problem, you know, which I am not there at all. So I'm still on like, yeah, I think we do want to be attractive. But that whole notion, I think there's a lot more pushback against that now in 2022.
Oh, sure. Yeah. What does that even mean? Like, people just want to, you know, people want to look the way they want to look. Like,
or they don't want to think about it. And, you know, they just want to be what Rose is in the beginning.
Yeah.
Doing work that makes them happy, having good friends, you know, et cetera, which she seems to. So yeah, again, like I said, there's parts of this movie that I really enjoy and parts where I'm like, what? That's effed up. That's weird. I should say you never came and stood outside my apartment at 6 a.m. I feel a little cheated.
I didn't need to. Like our courtship was relatively,
but still
simple and unproblematic.
And there was no Puccini ever.
This is true.
Yeah,
this is true.
There was never an opera singer living next to us.
Yeah,
so.
we are much closer to the arrangement that they had than the storybook romance.
I don't think so. Well, it's been nearly 20 years, so I don't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like we're into that phase of it, the phase that happens after you're young, and
also we're in our 40s and we're tired.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like we're, you know, I can order your food from specific restaurants just the way that you want it. And yeah, like that's we have already put in the work to get to the point that he wanted, that Greg wanted to jump to by omitting the sex.
Yeah.
So
anyway, like I said, this is our intro says movies that they loved. I wouldn't say this is a movie that I love, but I find it very interesting to talk about, which we certainly did. Talk about it.
Well, they can't all be, you know, our favorite movies of all time. That list runs out after a while.
That's true. Well, folks, we would love to know what you think about this movie. Who do you think is the villain? And why is it Lauren Bacall? Tell me about it. You can drop us an email or you can reach us on Facebook or Twitter. Our handle is the same for all three. It's YSMY Podcast, YSMY for You Show Me Yours. You can send us an email at gmail.com or message us on Facebook and Twitter. And also our timelines for both of those. We post links to all of our newest episodes. We have new episodes every other Wednesday. So 2 weeks from today, no matter when you're listening, there'll be a new episode up. Also on Facebook right now, over the next couple of days, this is the last days of 2022. We're going to be posting our most popular episodes of the year. So if there's some of ours that you haven't heard, check it out and go give them a listen. We'll see what the most popular episode of the year is. If you, Facebook and Twitter are not your thing, you can find us on most of your major podcast providers, specifically Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, we'd love it if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get the latest episodes right in your queue. And if you rate and review, it helps other people learn about the podcast and helps us move up the charts, such as they are. And new episodes every 2 weeks, which means in 2 weeks, there'll be a new one, and Dave is hosting. And what are we watching next time, Dave?
Next time, I'm going to bring an actual comedy from the 90s. No, I feel like, I want to bring a few more comedies in the new year. So we're going to start out with Airheads, an excellent rock and roll comedy.
Not the Gum or whatever it was.
No.
Okay.
It's, with current darling amidst his career renaissance, Brendan Fraser.
Oh yeah.
This is one of his, early-ish roles. One of the roles that made people go, "Oh,
was it?
Look at this.
Really?
He's hot. He's cute. Whatever."
Okay.
So Airheads, Steve Buscemi, Adam Sandler.
Steve Buscemi's in that? Oh,
Yes,
wow.
yes.
Okay. I can see the poster in my head. I know there's a lot of hair flying around.
Yes,
But
yes. So,
okay.
little comedy. It should be an interesting one. It's
Okay.
it's in that sort of Adam Sandler. What is it? Adam McKay. Like who's the other guy that does all the movies?
Judd Apatow?
Judd Apatow. Like it's in that sort of
Okay.
orbit, even if it's not necessarily those people.
Yeah.
It's in that sort of orbit of those sorts
Okay.
of movies.
Okay.
Should be a fun time.
All right. Well, that'll be a vibe change for sure from this week. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, we will see you in 2 weeks with Airheads. In the meantime, this has been You Show Me Yours. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. The You Show Me Yours theme song is Uplifting Electronic Indie by Winnie the Moog from filmmusic.io.